A very common mistake that people make is they don't eat enough in general. It's very easy to undereat on a carnivore diet. Your hunger signals are very well, they're just much more mild and subtle than when you're eating carbohydrates. When you eat carbohydrates, it just accents that hunger signal, and your body thinks you really need energy when you don't necessarily. And so you tend to have a stronger signal. So when that goes away, you have a much more subtle signal, and so people can undereat very, very easily. I did for the first few years that I was doing this, and I even noticed this. I was like, I haven't eaten in 3 days, 4 days. I'm working out like crazy, and like I should really eat. But I remember thinking to myself, I'm like, I'm just not hungry. I'm just not hungry. But anytime I would eat, it tasted amazing, and I enjoyed it. And that's when I came to realize that taste signal is a better marker. And so you have to relearn your hunger signals and going by taste. So if meat, fatty meat especially, because as any chef will tell you, fat is flavor. If you're eating fatty meat and you're hungry, it will taste good. And so you're getting that positive feedback. But then eventually, once your body has enough of it, it actually will get less and less positive feedback until you get no positive feedback. And then you just feel like, I'm not really interested in eating this, and you just naturally stop. If you keep eating it, you'll actually get negative feedback, and it'll actually start tasting bad, and you won't want to do that. And some people, I have patients that have had portion issues, and they're used to eating a large volume of food, and they say, I can't finish my meals. I get halfway through, and I feel nauseous, and I hate it. It just tastes disgusting, and I have to force feed myself. And of course, I explained to them, well, this is your body telling you that you were actually done halfway through the meal. People will maybe they'll be eating more meat, and they'll be eating a lot more fat than they used to. But of course, we've been told for the last 40 years, 50 years, don't eat any fat. And so most people are eating a lot more fat than they used to eat, but it's not enough fat. And so they're thinking it couldn't possibly be that, because I'm eating so much more fat than I ever ate. So obviously I'm eating enough fat. But in fact, it's a lot more than that. So animals in the wild typically get around 70 to 80% calories from fat. Carnivores, because they eat animals with fat, and they go for the fat first. But also herbivores, because that's actually what they break down fiber into. So they eat fiber, but it's actually their bacteria that digest and absorb the fiber. And as a byproduct, they release fat and protein. So even a gorilla and a cow that just eat plants, grass and leaves, they actually absorb fat and protein. And so we all need fat and protein. They get that, gorillas get around 70% calories from fat. Cows get even closer to 80% calories from fat. And again, so that's a lot more fat than people think, because we've been told to get like less than 20% calories from fat. Well, now you want more than that. And it's different for different people, but it's generally a lot more than people think. And so if people are tired or they're lethargic, especially if they're not having as good of workouts and they don't have the same energy levels that they used to on exertion, that can be a major reason why. And so just to think about that, maybe, am I eating enough fat?
That's why I have butter is gold, because
Yeah.
butter, fatty meat, and all the fat is really important, because that's what keeps you satiated.
Yeah, absolutely. And your body chases nutrients more than it chases calories. And fat is not just a calorie source. It is an essential nutrient. There are essential fatty acids that you have to have that you cannot get from anything except animal sources, and they come with a lot of fat soluble vitamins that that you do need, that are essential. When you're getting that high quality nutrition, you will be satiated for longer, because your body has those nutrients, and so you stay more satiated, with better energy levels longer. It's difficult to eat too much fat. From taste, things will just start not tasting as good. But also, you have a sort of an overflow valve for fat anyway, because our body has a limited capacity for absorbing fat. So we make bile from our liver that's stored in our gallbladder, released into our intestine, small intestine, and that is what emulsifies fat and allows us to absorb it. You have a finite amount of bile. It's not made very quickly. It takes 24 hours to make around 800 milliliters of bile, and after that, you're out. You run out. And so once you've run out, it's very difficult for your body to absorb that. It can do a little bit. It can, especially like medium chain fatty acids can get a bit of those, but it's actually a very, very small percentage of the fat can be absorbed without bile. So the vast majority of that will go out. And so the only way you could really overeat fat is, well, you can overeat fat in the sense you eat more fat than your body can absorb. but you're not going to absorb it really. So it's very hard to over absorb fat. Most people drink coffee, and most people keep drinking coffee when they go carnivore, and coffee is a laxative. And when you don't have this just ton of fiber blocking the pipes, that laxative effect is much more dramatic and more noticeable. And so maybe you're drinking the same amount of coffee, but now you're getting diarrhea, right? Also, artificial sweeteners, even, like, especially like sucralose and the different sort of sugar alcohols, those are definitely laxatives, but even stevia, monk fruit sweetener, they could act in that way as well. So those those generally need to be taken out. But some people say, well, they're not carbs, so that's okay on a carnivore diet. It's like, well, it's not meat, and it's not animal, so I still wouldn't eat it, and it can act as a laxative, and so can coffee. So I would eliminate those two first. But if they're only on meat and only on water, right, or BBE, strict, not having anything else, the beef, butter, eggs, beef, butter, bacon, and eggs that Dr. Berry does, and they're only doing that, nothing else, then yes, I would say that you can just pull back on the fat. You just don't need to eat as much fat. If you have dry, hard stools, then that means your body's absorbing all the fat that you're taking in, and none is getting sent out, right? So you do have that cap, you do have that overflow valve, and after that, that's going to go out. It's going to go into your stools. You're going to excrete it, and that's actually what's going to keep your stools soft. And so, you may go less often, but that's not constipation. Constipation is dry, hard stools on the Bristol stool chart. You can look that up. And so if there's fat in it, it'll dry out. It doesn't matter how long your colon is supposed to dry out, it's supposed to dehydrate this stuff. That's its job. And so, people say, well, you need to eat fiber so you can move this super quick so it doesn't dry out all that much. You're literally fighting against your nature. So obviously that's incorrect. When you have excess fat, that keeps that in there. It's already dry. Fat repels water. And so it can stay in there for as long as you want. It will never get more dry than that, and it'll stay so. So it's that little excess fat that means, A, you're getting enough fat because you're absorbing as much as your body wants you to absorb. So I would consider that definitionally enough fat. And then a little extra, and then that's your clear objective marker that you're getting enough fat and your body's absorbing everything it wants to, and a little extra, right? So if you're constipated, you're having dry, hard stools, and you're drinking coffee, then you can actually speed things up, and it can move it through. And you think, oh yeah, I'm not having normal stools, and normal consistency stools, and so that's fine. But they have other problems, and they're not doing as well. Skin's not as good, or their hair's a bit dry and brittle. They don't have as much energy when they're working out and things like that. And even though they're drinking coffee, they don't have great energy levels, which can also be damaged by caffeine as well. That's what you have to sort of start to think about. If you're eating enough fat and you're drinking coffee, you probably should have diarrhea, and so that can mask people that are under eating fat. I mean, some people like the ritual. They like making it. They like the smell. They like going to coffee shops, and there's that social experience with it, which is fine. I mean, hospitals run on coffee, right? Everybody, nurses and doctors and everyone, like, if you want to, be nice to your team, you bring coffee. When you're meeting up on a break, you meet for coffee. It's always coffee. It's very much a coffee driven industry. I don't drink coffee, but I still go to coffee. I still buy people coffee if they want it, if they choose to do that. They choose to do that to themselves. And I just drink water, so I still have that social aspect. I'm still there and still enjoying it. Well, I think a major one is keeping in some sort of sweetener, like the monk fruit sweetener or the stevia or the sugar alcohols, things like that. Usually the coffee and sweeteners go hand in hand. Usually someone's still drinking coffee, and well, I don't want to put sugar in it, so I'll put this sweetener in it as well, or maybe in whole heavy cream or something like that. They always ask me, it's like, well, I do have heavy cream in my coffee, is that okay? And I was like, well, heavy cream's fine, coffee's not great, and so, but if you're looking for optimal health and you're looking to feel as good as you possibly can, then you do want to sort of eliminate these things down to just meat and water, maybe salt to taste if that's your predilection. But the main thing is to try to eliminate out all of these other things. And I definitely think artificial sweeteners are in that category. I think that specifically for weight loss and fat loss, because I think fat loss is a better way of saying it, because I lost 23 pounds just ditching vegetables and increasing the amount of feed. I quintupled my calories and lost 23 pounds by ditching, spinach, kale, and broccoli. That's all I was eating: spinach, kale, and broccoli, and like lean meat, and I wasn't eating that much. I rapidly or dramatically increased my calories and the amount of meat I was eating, and just stopped the greens. I lost 23 pounds in 10 days. But then I stayed exactly the same. I didn't change my weight. I weighed the same for months after that, but I just started visibly transforming. I started stacking on muscle and shredding fat. And so I was replacing one tissue with another. So I was getting rid of fat, but I was putting on muscle. It just happened to be exactly equivalent as far as weight was concerned. But yeah, so sweeteners, I think that those are a major one that inhibit fat loss in particular. And you hit your limbic system, you get this sweet taste, and this can signal your body to think that there's sugar coming. And there's conflicting studies on that, but there are studies showing that you can get rebound hypoglycemia and an insulin spike from eating any sort of sweetener that doesn't have sugar in it. So either way, this isn't something that even existed 50,000 years ago or 100,000 years ago or even 100 years ago in a lot of cases. And so you can't really argue that this is something that we need. This is something essential. This is something that belongs in our food, because it didn't exist. When I talk to people and they say, I really like carnivore because I felt so good on it, but it really, didn't work out for me. And I ask them what they mean by that. And they say, well, I felt really good. I had great energy, mental clarity was wonderful. And I reversed all my autoimmune issues. Those were all improving. My diabetes was getting better, but I just wasn't really losing weight. So I guess it didn't work for me. It really sucks because I felt so much better on so many other ways. Yeah.
From a theoretical point of view, your body doesn't want to lose weight if it's inflamed and sick.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of people are coming from different places, and you can have a lot of hormonal imbalances, especially with leptin, and that is very difficult. If your leptin is raised, especially dramatically raised, which some people are, who have been doing a lot of shock diets and eating a lot of carbs and sugar and things like that for years and years and years, their leptin is going to go up. They're going to get leptin insensitivity, leptin resistance, and along with insulin resistance and hyperglycemia, this causes disruption in your body and your metabolism. It's a major signaling molecule for your hormones, for your metabolism, for many, many other things. And so while that's massively elevated, it's going to be very difficult to lose weight. If your leptin is over like a certain amount, it's usually between like 4 and 6. That's where you want it, ideally. If it goes over 100, which is quite common, I see it quite regularly, people will tell you, like doctors who deal with weight loss medicine or bariatric surgeons, they will tell you that if your leptin's over 100, you cannot lose weight on your own. You will not be able to do it. You have to get surgery. You have to get bariatric surgery, a bypass or a sleeve or something like that. That's not true. I see people routinely go on a carnivore diet and not only lose weight, but drop their leptin. And the weight loss can be slow at first, but again, that's weight loss, not necessarily fat loss and body composition. Their health improves dramatically, and their leptin starts to come down. And once their leptin gets down to a more normal level, that's when you start seeing the dramatic drop in adipose tissue and fat loss.
Okay, that's why we love you, because you make it so easy.
Your family doctor, general practitioner can test that. They may not know what to do with it. But the optimal levels are sort of, when you look at reference ranges at the lab, those are just basically like the first 2,000 people that come in that year. That's the reference range, and so that's an average of the population in your area. And this is why 2 labs in the same town can have different reference ranges, slightly different. That's because they had slightly different people come in. And so that's not really a reference range of optimal health. That's the reference range of the average in your community. And, the average person used to be healthy. Now the average person is sick and metabolically unhealthy. So 90% of Americans have at least one metabolic illness. 70% of Americans are overweight or obese. The rest of the world is not far behind. In fact, some places are far worse than that. And so it's not good to go by those reference ranges necessarily. Some of those reference ranges are way out of whack, like leptin. Generally, they consider leptin reference range is much higher than it should be. A lot of these reference ranges would be like 160 to 620, and that's normal, right? So you get your B12 back, it's like 200. Well, it's sort of low normal, that's okay. Or 300. Oh, okay, no, that's pretty good. Just like middle of the pack. No, actually, that's a deficiency. Anything below 400, you get neurological damage and you get demyelination of your axons. So B12 is vital for the myelination of your nerve cells, your axons. And if that's sort of like the insulation on wires, and it helps with conductivity and with the signal, and it protects it as well. And so if you don't have that proper myelination, you can slow down your signal, the transduction of your signal, and that can be damaged. You can actually get neurological damage. We see this in neurosurgery. We look at MRIs, typically in vegans and vegetarians who are chronically B12 deficient. Even when they supplement, sometimes they don't supplement enough, but they need to supplement. And if you have to supplement, then by definition, your diet is deficient. So clearly a vegetarian vegan diet is deficient because they are losing out on these nutrients. But their spinal cord actually atrophies. And you see this on MRI. Their spinal cords are more thin than just omnivores in the normal public. There was actually a study in Oxford in 2008 that followed a bunch of people, but they had a vegan cohort, and they followed them after 5 years, and they did MRIs, and they found that their brains actually shrank by over 5% after 5 years. And they thought that this was most likely to do with B12 because they had significantly lower B12. But even in the people that had supplemented B12, they still actually had significant atrophy as well. So it's not just that, but is this Dr. Chaffee guy, full of crap, like, I don't think coffee is that big of a deal. Maybe I'll, go off for a month and maybe I'll have some coffee, see what happens. Go for it. Do try that. But, then if you see that going, actually that does affect me, that does cause that I don't feel as good as I do otherwise, then you just hop back on. Or, you go out and, alcohol is a big one that people slip up on, and maybe they've been carnivore for several months. But then they're like, man, I really miss drinking. I really miss that social aspect. And they go out drinking. Drinking is well known to lower your inhibitions for eating crap food anyway. You eat a lot more high octane garbage, like, processed carbs and sugar anyway. And so now you're more likely to sort of slip off. And then they did that. So they drink alcohol, they go out and they eat a whole bunch of crap and go like, oh, well, I guess I just can't do it. Well, you can, just get right back on it. And it's okay to even experiment. And it's okay to even go off, and drink or have a meal or something like that. If you want to, it's better to do that once every now and then consciously than just give it up and do that every single day. I think that naturally you will find that you just feel so much better that you don't want to do that. Because I have zero interest in eating this crap because I know what it makes me feel like. And I've done that experiment. I've had things like, okay, well, what does this do to me? And I'm like, I don't like that. I don't want that. I like feeling my best. I like feeling like a superhero 24/7. I would way rather feel like a superhero 24/7 than eat something nummy sometimes or be drunk sometimes